This episode of the BJJ Foxcast is brought to you by BioPro. BioPro is an all-natural alternative to prescription human growth hormone, which aids in recovery, anti-aging, metabolism, libido, immunity, skin health, cognition, sleep, and stress. Just one vial per day provides a substantial boost to all of these growth factors. Okay, so that's what they want me to say. Here's what I know as an aging grappler. I've been using BioPro Plus and the nighttime variant, BioPro Plus Cortisleep, for several months, and it feels like I've grown a third lung. My gas tank is noticeably bigger, my recovery is faster, and I'm back on the mats much quicker, not just between training sessions, but between rounds. Now you can get $30 off your first order of BioPro when you use the code Foxcast at www.bioproteintech.com. That's code Foxcast for $30 off your first order at www.bioproteintech.com. Thank you, BioPro. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the BJJ Foxcast. I am your host, Alex Martinez, and today I have none other than the multiple-time world champion, multiple-time Japan's champion, European champion, Brazilian nationals champion, American nationals champion, and that's just all the stuff I could fit onto one card. Bernardo Faria, thank you for coming on the show, sir.
Thanks, Alex. It's a huge honor for me to be here. And,
I love it.
And to speak with you.
Oh, man.
I appreciate the invitation, and I hope we have a good episode here.
So, Bernardo, first I want to say thank you for making the time, and I want to get right into it. Most of the time when I talk to people such as yourself that has such an extensive background in jiu-jitsu, and but I really, it's really easy for us to get into, like, hey, I remember this fight, I remember that championship, I remember this or that, and we will get into that, I promise. But I want to talk to you about your entrepreneurship, that journey that you started, initially with BJJ Fanatics, and I'm sure it's ventured into other things. But how did your entrepreneur life start? When did that start for you?
Yeah, no, I always have that. I think, like, when you do jiu-jitsu professionally and you are a professional athlete, you are already an entrepreneur. Because, for example, I think, like, most of the traditional sports, like if you play tennis ball or if you're like a Formula One driver, I think, like, you have a whole team around you and you just have to do what you do.
Yeah.
And the jiu-jitsu, it's a new sport, so it's growing right now. So I think, like, when you do jiu-jitsu professionally, you are your own secretary, you are your own manager, you are the product. You are. So the way I see that is, like, since I decided that I would do jiu-jitsu for a living, I was like 15, 16 years old, I became an entrepreneur, like, because I had to manage my schedule. I had to manage my sponsorships. I had to manage my agenda for seminars. I had to manage my schedule for tournaments. I had to manage my private lessons, my seminars. And so I think, like, I think I was already an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And then when I saw the opportunity to do that online with BJJ Fanatics, that's when I met one of my partners, Michael. Then I think was like a natural transition. And I always had in mind, like, what I'm going to do when I retire, when I stop competing, like, is it owning a jiu-jitsu school? Is it doing something completely out of the box, completely outside jiu-jitsu? So I feel very grateful that I was able to build this business that relates to jiu-jitsu, which is the thing that I love the most in my life, like.
Yeah. And early on when you were starting your competition life, I imagine you started pretty much right when you started jiu-jitsu. I'd imagine in your teens. Doing jiu-jitsu is not cheap by any means, and it's not easy to find sponsorships. How did you hustle? How did you do that to find sponsorships?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I go even more backwards than that. So the biggest challenge for me in my life probably was exactly this. Because when I decided that I would do jiu-jitsu, I started jiu-jitsu when I was 14 years old, back in 2001. And then when I decided that I would do jiu-jitsu, I was probably like 16 years old that I made the decision, like, okay, this is the thing I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So I was like in the top of the I was like that teenager age, like 15, 16, 17. And then when I told my parents that I would do jiu-jitsu for a living, they completely freaked out, like, and I came from a family in Brazil that's like a middle-class type of family. And most of the people in my family, they're either like doctors or lawyers or engineers and dentists. So very like traditional jobs, like, so when I told them that I would go completely out of that line, they freak it out, and it's that age that you are all insecure, like, so that was the biggest challenge for me, was to prove to my family that I could do that. And especially my dad, he was really like, I don't even know if the word is upset, but he was very worried, and in a bad way almost, like I heard things that I shouldn't have heard when I was that age, like, and I love
Yeah.
him, I love my mom. They're the most important people in my life, together with my wife and my daughter. But I don't think they did a great job. I'm gonna be different with my daughters, like, and then they both look backwards and they kind of regret on, like, especially now that everything worked out. But I
Yeah.
don't blame them, like, I'm a father now, and I know how it is having kids.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was the biggest challenge in my life, was to prove to my whole family that this could become a thing, like that was my passion, that I also wanted to do that as a work, because my whole family was pretty much like, oh, he's a bum, like he doesn't want to work, like he doesn't want to work, he doesn't want to study, he just want to do this thing that he likes, like.
Yeah.
And then, so I always had that in mind, that I have to find ways to generate revenue, like,
Yeah.
to prove to them that this is a thing. So I was always like, I remember when I was teaching seminars, for example, I was really organized with my agenda, like
Mhm.
really, really organized, like more organized than the other people teaching seminars. And same thing with sponsorships, which was your original question here.
Yeah.
Like, I was like 16, 17 years old, and there was a supplement company in my hometown that would sponsor my trips and pay my tuitions for the tournaments. And my first instructor, who gave me all my belts, worked out a deal with me that I didn't have to pay the membership. And like, and at least I could live at my parents' house. I had food, house. I could travel for tournaments,
Yeah.
and in my mind, I was like, yeah, that's all I need for now.
Yeah.
And like,
And seek, I hate to call it seeking their approval, but kind of proving to your parents that this could be a career. Is that what drove you during your world championship runs?
to me, it was almost like I had no choice but winning, like I had to win the tournaments.
Yeah.
Like, that was my, because in my mind, I was like, the only way I'm gonna be able to make a good living with this, is if I become one of the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, if I made this choice, I have no other choice, like I gotta become one of the best guys. And I was really obsessed with that, like, to the point that I remember, like, I used to watch like hundreds of like interviews with the very best guys to try to understand how they would train, how they would think on the week of the tournament and the day of the tournament. I remember back then was the chat. There was no Facebook, right?
Right.
And the chat was like MSN.
Yeah.
So I had MSN with guys that was like one belt higher than me, and I would ask them how many times they train per week, how was
Wow.
their training method. So I was really like obsessed on trying to learn what was the secret to create my formula, like.
Yeah. And what was your secret? So when I look at world champions, there's a lot of them are hard to understand because they are so, I like to call it in the lab, right? They don't go out and party. They're very dedicated to their nutrition, to their, to all of that stuff. But what attributes do you see in world champions that makes them that world champion? Those people at that level, what attributes do they all share?
I think, like, especially in jiu-jitsu, it's a mix of like the mental aspect, the techniques, and the conditioning, like your physical attributes.
Yeah.
But one thing that I always say is, like, there's no formula and there's no recipe, like each person has to create their own. So when I look backwards in my career, for example, I think like talking to a lot of people, watching a lot of interviews helped me to see what the best were doing and pick what could work for me. And in my career was a lot of like, which we do a lot of here in the business as well, like, was a lot of tests, like, was a lot of trial and error. So for example, I tested doing judo, But then I realized that judo for my game was not the best thing because you have to keep like a higher posture. And for the over-under pass, I think a lower posture is better because then when the person pulls guard, you're already there.
Yeah.
So wrestling was a very fit for me. So I did judo for 1 or 2 years, and then I stopped and started doing wrestling. I used to work out with my instructor when I was leaving my hometown. He was also a physical conditioning coach. Then I moved to São Paulo, was kind of doing by myself. And then when I went to New York City, I understood that having a personal trainer makes a big difference too. So I had to test doing by myself to realize that no, it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they love drilling. The drilling is the most important thing they do when they're training. To me, drilling was not very important. To me, it was more about rolling with tough guys as many rounds as I could and really pushing myself to that limit than just drilling, So anyways, the bottom line is I don't think there is a formula or recipe. You have to try a lot of things, see what works the best for you, and have a clear conscience that you're doing your best. I think that's one of the most important parts. Because many people, they know that they're not doing their best, they know that they could have trained 10 sessions per week and they did only 7 or 8. They know that they could be doing wrestling, but they're kind of lazy because the gym I'm just giving an example.
Yeah.
So to me, it was always when it's time to go to bed, I know that I did my very best that day, and I'm going to wake up next day and I'm going to do the same thing and the same thing, which relates a lot to what I do in business as well. I wake up feeling that I'm a professional athlete, how can I do the best I can do today? How can I prioritize the most important things? And so I think those are the relationships between the both areas.
Yeah, so you took the discipline that you learned as a professional athlete into the business world, and that's kind of where the success comes from?
Not going to say that exactly where the success comes from, but it's definitely a thing that helps me a lot, having that discipline, that resilience, and because I do think that competing and being a professional athlete helps a lot on everything in life because you build the resilience, you build the determination, you build the discipline, you build the grit, which I think it's the $1 million question, right? How to teach grit, so I think, those are kind of my thoughts there.
Yeah. And when I watch your matches, it's so funny because when I was doing the prep for the show, I'm watching, obviously videos that you've done in the past, stuff like that. And my wife is like, "Who's that guy?" And I said, "Oh, he's going to be on the podcast." And, we were just going back and forth. And he's like, "Oh, he seems really nice." And then I played one of the videos from one of your world championships. She's like, "That can't be the same guy. You flipped the switch." You flipped the switch in competition. And one of the first videos I ever saw of you was, gosh, it's been a while, but you talked about the mental preparation. And it's when I started jiu-jitsu kind of late in life. I started when I was 40. And so I wanted to compete, because I got the competitive bug in me, but it was always the mental part of it really messed with me because, my age and injuries and all that other stuff that comes into play. But what was it about your preparation that helped you mentally prepare so much? Is there anything that you did? Did you proactively work on your mental game, or is it something that just came along on its own?
One thing I did that I still do, and I started when I was a purple belt. I work with a psychologist, and I still work with the same guy. He lives in Brazil. I do phone calls, and every other week or every 3 weeks, we do a session on the phone, and that was a pretty game changer for me. And I don't know, there were a lot of things that happened in my career that you can call oh, this was a coincidence, or maybe that was the reason. So I don't know. But for example, I was white belt 1 year, blue belt 1 year. No, white belt 1 year, yellow belt 1 year, 3 years as a blue belt.
Oh, wow.
So when I was a blue belt, I had just started college as well. In my third year as a blue belt was my first year in the college. And then my third year as a blue belt, I pretty much lost all the major tournaments.
Whoa.
And it was a big year for me regarding what am I doing? Like, I'm on my 30 years of blue belt. I want to do this profession, and I'm losing all the tournaments. And coincidence is my first year in college. So,
Yeah.
is it a message that I should stop this thing here and just focus on the college? That I was studying business and administration in
Yeah.
college, and then then my instructor promoted me as a purple belt. So I got my purple belt. 3 years of blue belt, got my purple belt, and I started working for psychologists.
Oh.
Then 6 months later, I won the World's Open class.
Yeah.
So, so now did I win the World's Open class as a purple belt because I started working for psychologists? I don't know, but I did work. And the same thing, like when I won the double gold in the Worlds as a black belt, 1 year prior to that, I started working for personal trainer for my conditioning, KP, Kevin Peretti, and I started doing wrestling.
Oh, okay.
So did I win double gold in the Worlds? I don't know if it was because the wrestling, because the conditioning, because everything.
Yeah.
Because coincidence, I had just started the business as well. So my mind was more like jiu-jitsu is not the only thing in my life anymore.
Wow.
So there were a lot of things that happened in my career. That's hard to judge if that was the thing that made me win. But it was definitely one more thing, like so answering your question, like to prepare mentally, I worked with a psychologist, and that helped me a lot. And the most important thing that he was trying to, don't even know if the word is teaching me, but sharing to me was like, you do what you want to do. You don't do what you have to do.
Say more about that. Say more about that.
He was like, the reason you do jiu-jitsu and the reason you choose jiu-jitsu is because you want to do jiu-jitsu. It's not because you have to do jiu-jitsu. So we had a lot of discussions about it. Like, for example, we are in the tournament, right? Then we made it to the finals. You see a lot of people getting nervous. Oh, it's the finals.
Yeah.
If I win, I'm the champion. If I lose, I'm just another person who lost, right? The second and the person who lost
nobody
cares.
First round.
No one cares. Yeah. And then a lot of people go to the finals and they feel very nervous. And in my mind, I was like, this is where I dreamed to be. Like this is the happiest time of my life. Like I'm in the finals of the World Championship.
Yeah.
Like so. A lot about like appreciating what you got to help you to get the next step, which is winning the finals, for example. Yeah. And it's funny because when I look backwards, the best moments in my life were almost like, it's not even like after the finals, it was before the finals. So for example, when you go to the finals of the World's Open class on IBJJF, the finals is next day.
Yeah. So
that gap between Saturday and Sunday was literally the best moments of my life.
Wow.
Like you are in the finals, you have all that adrenaline inside you. You leave the tournament with everybody talking, oh, he's in the finals. And then you arrive next day in the gymnasium, everybody's pointing to you, he's in the finals of the open class. So anyways, again, answering your question about what helped me mentally, I think was this idea of trying to appreciate things instead of feeling like forced to do things.
Yeah.
Like I think when you do something that you want to do, that you have passion, that you love doing, you do much better than when you have that pressure that, okay, I have to do this. I have to win. No one has to win. Like you want to win. It's different.
Yeah. I love that. That's a great way to look at it, because some people have, the mentality, I have to win even in the first round, in the not even in the qualifier, like, you know what I mean? So
you don't have to anything, right? Like
I love that. That is such a great tool to have. So let's talk about your world championships. Well, let's talk about just championships in general. Okay. Well, world championships specifically, I guess. Tell me about your favorite one. There's got to be one that stands out. That's like, that was the moment. That was something that felt really special.
I mean, like, the most important one was the Worlds double gold that I did as a black belt in 2015.
Yeah.
And there were a few other ones that was like, as a purple belt when I won the Worlds Open class, that was like the shift in my mind that you can do it. Like if you won the Worlds Open class training in this little gym in your hometown, you can do it as a black belt one day, you know, like, so that was like the confidence shifts that I got, you know,
Yeah.
like, and so that is a purple belt. Then as a black belt, I won the double gold in the Pan Ams 2010. That led me to win the world's my first world title a few months later.
Yeah.
And then in 2015 was my best year. Like I competed the Pan Ams and the worlds, and I won both double gold, and I tapped almost everybody. Like
Wow.
in the worlds, I think I did 7 matches and I got 6 submissions.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, so those were the best moments in my career, and I'm very proud about that time because, for example, nowadays I feel jiu-jitsu. There's so many tournaments that I feel like in 2015 the only thing was like words IBJJF
Yeah.
and ADCC. There was
Yeah.
no other. So all the very best guys, they were on these 2 tournaments, you know, like nowadays I think there are so many super fights, tournaments, and this and that, that for example, you see like Merigali doesn't do the world championship anymore. And he might be the best guy with the gi nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we need the world title on IBJJF nowadays. It's not as hard as before because before there was literally everybody there. And nowadays, because these other tournaments who pay, people are being more selective of what they do. Like Mikey Musumeci is not competing in the worlds anymore. He's competing at one
Yeah.
in Asia. So that division is a little less hard.
Right.
You know, like,
Yeah.
I didn't use the word easy because never is easy, but little less hard, you know.
Yeah,
like.
no, I think you put it very brilliantly because you're right. You know, with the ADCC being what it always has been, but now that it's such a giant production that all of the eyes are on the ADCC. But you know, in my experience coming up in jiu-jitsu, you weren't a world champion unless you were an IBJJF world champion.
Yeah. With the gi, I think that's how I think as well. Like, gi, it's the IBJJF Adult Division World Championship.
Yep.
Nogi, it's the ADCC. You know, like,
yep.
And those are the 2 main ones. You know, like.
Absolutely. So you've made it possible for the newest generation of competitors to monetize their gold medals. You came up a little bit harder. Okay. So tell me about coming up, 2015, and before as a world champion, having to monetize based on, you didn't have the luxury to put out a video and have it go out to the masses on BJJ Fanatics, right? You had to maybe make, DVDs or something like that. But how did you monetize those gold medals early on in your career?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's a really good question to show like how jiu-jitsu is growing. So, for example, the first tournament that I ever get paid in my life was as a black belt in 2009 in Brazil, and I made 1,000 reais. That was $200.
Bam, payday, baby.
And I was feeling like I'm rich. Because it was the first time I saw money winning a tournament in my life.
Did you get one of those big giant checks? Do you get one of those big giant checks that you hold up?
1,000 reais, yes. And that was 2009, right? If it was today, it would probably be like 2,000 reais or so. But anyways, so nowadays, you see like there are these tournaments that pays like $30,000, $40,000. There are super fights that you hear like, oh, this guy made 40,000, made 50,000, made 20,000. And then, so this was the first tournament, 1,000 reais, $200. The tournament that I made the most money in my life was in 2012 in Italy. I won my division, I won the open class, and I won the super fight, and I made 12,000 euros.
Whoa. Okay.
I mean, like it's starting to make. That was 2012, so 12 years ago.
Yeah.
So you see that, and nowadays, like if you go to, like there's like IBJJF tournaments paying like 40,000.
Yeah.
There was one tournament in Asia 1 or 2 years ago that paid $100,000. You know, like So, but anyways, answering your question, back then my way to make a living when I was a black belt was a mix of teaching private lessons, teaching seminars, sponsorships, and those tournaments that didn't pay much, but was a mix of everything.
Yeah.
And then when I moved to New York City to teach and train at Marcelo's school, I was also teaching and training group classes. So I made a little more money there. And that's where I started making DVDs, like,
Yeah.
so, and then I was having some revenue from DVD. But going back to the very beginning of this episode here, that's why, like, I feel like if you are a professional athlete in Jiu-Jitsu, you are an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because you're teaching seminars, you're teaching privates,
Yeah.
you're competing in that tournament, you're filming videos. So it's literally like a one-person company.
Yeah.
That you have all these little sources of revenue.
Yeah.
That if you put them together, you can make a very good living. And if you become one of the best guys, Jiu-Jitsu is growing to the point that you can become like an athlete as other sports as well.
Yeah. I love what it's becoming. And I love the personalities that are out there, Gordon Ryan and all those guys, just big, giant personalities. And, there's different ways to monetize, right? Gordon chooses his one path, right? It kind of gets everybody a little angry at him. And, but it tends to move the needle, and everybody watches because there's either 200,000 people that want to watch him win, or 500,000 people that want to watch him lose. Either way, there's 900. There's so many people, so many eyes on him, right? But you've taken a different path with you're basically, I consider you more like a host at BJJ Fanatics. Like, people come to you and you're you do the presentation, like it's a huge honor to have my friend, and that's really like a boost to their revenue source, right? How does one get the ability to come on to BJJ Fanatics and sell a DVD or sell their techniques and stuff like that? How do they go about doing that?
We have it's a mix of things. Like, many times it's referral. We film with someone and they say, hey, I know this guy that he does this move, so it's a mix of like us reaching out to the people. And also we have like a section on the website that people can apply to become an instructor.
Okay.
And then, of course, like we are a company, so we have like a capacity to X amount of videos that we can do. So we have like some sort of criteria to see who we can film and who we should not film. But yes, it's a mix of like we reaching out, sometimes through referrals, sometimes through we just saw this guy, he did amazing in this tournament, or this amazing coach, and we reach out, or they reach out to us and we film with that. So it's a mix of those two options, kind of.
I love it. Yeah. And it's hard not to build a database on there, because I think I've got like, I don't know, at least a couple $1,000s in videos that I purchased along the way. And you always get me with the little sales, you know what I mean? Like, oh, the holiday, whatever. Yeah, sure. 30% off, whatever, I'll buy it. But it helps me as a academy owner. It helps me brush up, like, hey, we're going to be teaching, a DPAF, and there's a video available that you can study from the best people in the world. So that makes it really convenient. Gone are the days of looking at magazines and books, trying to figure out techniques, from those sources. But I was going to ask you, towards the end of your competitive career, I believe it was like maybe 2017, I want to say 17, 18, somewhere in there. Was it, I mean, you still seem like you were on top of your game. Was it was it injuries? Was it other things getting in the way, like business stuff? What was it that made you say, this is going to be my last time? That's
a great question, and that's an easy answer, because I remember a day that I was going to Marcelo's school I was training and teaching at Marcelo's, right? So I had my backpack, 2 gears on my backpack, my computer, and I trained in the morning, and I had to train at night. And this was 2017, so then when was the night training session, I had a lot of stuff to do that I had to do on the business. And again, I had my computer and my gi on my backpack.
Yeah.
So I remember this. I was walking to Marcelo's school, and then I was like, should I train or should I go to Starbucks or coffee shop and do the work that I have to do?
Wow.
Then I kind of walked backwards to go to the coffee shop. And then I was like, no, wait a second, I got to train. Then I started walking backwards to the training. And then I was like, no, but I got to do that thing. And then I started questioning myself, like, what do I really enjoy the most nowadays? It's like training, or it's like working on this business that we started. And in my mind was like, okay, I won 5 world titles in Jiu-Jitsu. Uh, I had the hope to try to break the record of the open class,
Yeah.
which at that time was like, this was 2016, was not 2017.
Gotcha.
So at that time, the record was Buchecha. He had two open class titles, and I had one. So it was Buchecha and Roger. So in my mind, I was like, if I win the open class, now I have 2-2. Then maybe next year I win again and I broke the record. So that was 2016. So then I remember like going to Marcelo's school, going back to the coffee shop, and I ended up going to the training because that was the most important thing back then. But then I started questioning myself. I was like, I think nowadays I enjoy more trying to build this jiu-jitsu community than competing. And then I lost that world championship, and it was the one that I hurt my pec. So to me, that was the decision. I was like, I'm going to compete one more year, and I'm going to stop, and I'm going to focus 100% of my energy on the business. And I'm going to move to Boston because my both partners lives here, and I'm going to go all in to make this happen, and then I competed one more year. I lost in the finals, got second. And after that championship, never competed anymore. And looking backwards was a good decision. The business grew a lot, and that is what I really enjoy doing nowadays. I was competing from 2002 to 2017, so it's a good 15 years competing, giving my all, and I'm kind of like all in or I'm not in. So I really gave my best, and it was time to stop, and I have dreams sometimes that I'm that is the night of the tournament. The tournament tomorrow is next week, and was the best moments in my life. I don't think that thing that people say that the best things in life are the ones that money can't buy. It's really true.
Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
Winning a world championship, there's no money whatsoever that's gonna even make a difference.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And when you moved to Boston, did you already have a family, or did you start your family after you moved?
I met my wife in New York City.
Okay.
And she is Kira Gracie's sister. So
okay.
Kira Gracie from Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
So one day I was walking in the Central Park in New York City, and I crossed with Kira, like coincidence. And then she told me, "Oh, my sister lives here. You guys should meet each other and this and that." And we met,
no
and we are together since then. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's cool. Yeah.
So,
wow. Yeah. So you and I, actually, I was looking forward to meeting you this week. I was going to go to the Oklahoma City seminar.
Yep.
I signed up. I bought my ticket. I bought my plane ticket. I got my hotel. Everything was all set up. And then my wife goes, "Hey, we have belt promotions that weekend." And I was like, oh no. So I tried to change the belt promotion, and my coaches were like, we can't do it. And then I tried to move it up one week, and they're like, no, that's Easter. And then we had to move it back. And so I had to cancel all my plans, but
oh my God.
So I made a promise to myself because, early on in jiu-jitsu, I was traveling a lot to compete because I just enjoy it so much. I just, I love it. And I love doing Master Worlds, and I love, all the people I get to meet and all that stuff. But this year I made a commitment to myself and my students that I would travel to learn. So I am actively seeking seminars to attend wherever they may be. And as soon as I made the decision, your seminar came up, and I'm like, done, I'm in, right? And me being me, I didn't ask my wife first, so I just jumped right into it. But are you going to do those types of seminars throughout the year?
We are organizing some of those camps at someone's gym.
Mm-hmm.
And I teach seminars as well. Just 1 or 2 weeks ago, I went to South Carolina and I got 75 people on the mat. And that was a one session seminar type of thing.
Yeah.
Those camps that we're organizing, it's more like a 3-day thing.
Yep.
It's Thursday night, meet and greet, and the open mat. Then Friday morning and night, Saturday morning and night, and Sunday morning. So we started, this is a funny story. So we did one in New Orleans. That was in one hotel and this and that. And we didn't like much the experience of being in a hotel because we can't control the environment as much as we would like. There's people walking around and blah, blah, blah. So we were like, wait a second, why don't you send an email to our customers list and ask if anyone is interested to host a BJJ Fanatics camp. And if it's a nice city and this and that, this is going to work perfectly. And then we did that. We sent an email to the list, and then people start applying. I swear to God, I can show you. I could screen share here and show you the people who applied.
Yeah.
The very first name was a name called André Galvão.
Oh my God.
and I even called him, left me. I was like, I saw your name here. Like,
oh my gosh.
So anyways, the bottom line is that we did the Atos HQ BJJ Fanatics camp last year in October at Atos. That was amazing. It was great. Everybody loved it. And then we're hoping to do one every year in San Diego at Atos HQ.
Nice.
It's going to be Atos BJJ Fanatics camp. And everything makes sense, because I think everybody loves André. Everybody has this desire to see how is the training at Atos HQ. Yeah. San Diego is such a nice city that I think a lot of people want to do traveling and this and that.
Yeah.
So we do have a camp in October at Atos HQ. We haven't picked the weekend yet, but we will very soon. And this weekend we have at Lovato's gym in Oklahoma, which we're very excited to. And I'm a huge Lovato fan. Like I competed against him a bunch of times. He was one of my biggest rivals.
Yeah.
One of the people that I have the most respect, because he is that type of guy who is going to fight until the very last second. You know, like,
so cool.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah, I love watching his videos because he kind of gives you a little taste of what his thought process is during the technique. Not just like, hey, this is like, how I'm going to attack this, cross collar choke from mount, but he'll talk about, well, if it's MMA, I need to make sure my head position is here, and you know what I mean, and where the balance points are versus just strictly gi jiu-jitsu where the balance point is in a little different position. I really enjoy watching his stuff. So when you see him, tell him I'm very sorry, I'm going to miss his seminar.
No, and there are a few guys in the world that if you really think deep, and I don't think enough people think that deep about it, it's very special. So I'm going to give you a few examples. So for example, Fabricio Verdun, man, he won 2 world titles with gi, 2 ADCCs, and 2 UFC belts.
Wow.
Then Henry Cejudo, he won the Olympic Wrestling Championship, and he won the UFC.
Yeah.
And I include Lovato in this bucket because, man, he was the second American to win the World Championship with gi. He got second on ADCC, and he won the Bellator.
Yeah.
So it's like talking about like a samurai. I think those guys like fits really well. Like you succeed with gi, you succeed no gi, and you succeed on MMA. This is not normal, like this is like.
Yeah, there can't be too many people that have done that. I mean, you're coming up with 3 off the top of your head, but I mean, you probably have to dig deep.
There's not a lot.
No.
Like, like if you dive deep, you might find like another 1, 2, or 3, but that's it. Like.
Yeah. Did you ever have any aspirations to fight MMA?
When I was a teenager, like 16, 17, 18, I did a little bit of Muay Thai. Then I did a little bit of boxing. But then I felt I had to make a decision, especially back then. I was doing college. And I was training Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
And I felt like if I would do college Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai, how is that going to work? So I decided to do Jiu-Jitsu, and then I got my black belt. And then I felt like, okay, now I got to win the tournament. So it was always like later. And then at some point I was like, I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah. Well, back then maybe you could have got away with it. Today, it's like kids are starting so young in MMA that
I agree.
By the time you're 20, I mean, you're almost behind the 8 ball. So
I fully agree.
Yeah. So, you were brought, okay, if I remember correctly, you were brought to the States by someone looking for some help with a UFC fighter, I think at your purple belt level?
Yeah, no, when I was a brown belt.
Brown belt, okay.
Yeah, this is also a good story because it relates to everything we have talked so far. So, I had that thing in mind that I had to prove to my family that I could make a living with Jiu-Jitsu, blah, 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 blah. And then I won the World's Open class as a purple belt. And I was still the only money that I was making in my life back then. I was like a sponsorship that pays my tournament, my travels, and pay my. So I was literally making like $0 with jiu-jitsu. And back then there was no like seminars for purple belt. There was no
Right.
jiu-jitsu tournaments that pay for purple belt, this and that. And I knew that things were already happening in America. You know? I knew that if you were purple belt open class champion in US back then, you could teach seminars, like people.
Yep.
So I made a post in one of those forums introducing myself, like saying, "Hey, I'm purple belt open class champion, I'm brown belt now, and I would love to go to US, spend some time." And then back then the manager of Gabriel Gonzaga reached out to me and said, "Hey, we need training partners for Gabriel Gonzaga. We live in Massachusetts, which is where I live now, coincidence. And if you want to come spend some time here, that would be great." Then I camped for 2 months and I stayed with Dan. It was a great experience. Gonzaga is a great guy too, very very good guy.
Do you still keep in touch with him?
I do, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Gonzaga filmed with us,
Right on.
and we have instructional video for him, so we train together. And he's a great guy, and yeah, so it was a great experience. And for when I look backwards in my career, that was a way for me to show to my family that there is a way to make a living.
Yeah.
People are making a good living with jiu-jitsu here in America. So I and then after that, my dad started like okay, it sounds like there is something here. Let's and then he started supporting me because I was finishing my college as well, so I did what he wanted.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do college back then, and he kind of forced me. And we were like, okay, I do the college, and then I was finishing the college, and he started supporting me. So,
is your dad's is your dad a does he have a legal background? Did he help you in that manner, or was it
he's
more
an
business?
electrical engineer.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying like in his picture it was like he's gonna do college about
Yeah.
engineer, lawyer, or whatever. He's gonna get a job and he's gonna live,
Yep.
and
Buy a house, give him grandkids, all that stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
like that. Nothing against that life. I think it's a good life too, but that was not my passion,
Yeah.
and I think like when you follow your passion, the chance that you're gonna succeed and the chance that you're gonna be resilient with all the obstacles that will show up, it's much higher, because you have something
Yeah.
bigger than just doing what you do,
Yeah. There's like a little cartoon picture of a guy digging in a mine, and and one guy quits, and you could see like the just one more strike with the axe, and there's diamonds on the other side, right? You've got to be willing to stick around long enough to hit that one more strike, right?
No, I fully agree. And I have heard similar quotes to that one as well. I have heard one that it says that at some point in your life you gotta cross the jungle,
Yeah.
and, and everybody goes through that. Whatever you are doing, at some point there's that hard time that you have to make a bunch of hard decisions, go through a bunch of obstacles, and overcome a lot of things. And probably gonna need to keep doing that for the rest of your life. But there's always like a time in life where everything is much harder than it is later.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of hard times, I mean, as a professional athlete, playing with the amount of time that you train, the amount of rounds that you get, and like you said, you like to pick the toughest rounds in the room and train, twice a day or whatever it was. I imagine you dealt with a lot of injuries. What was a significant injury that you I hate to say played through, but I mean, you had to do what you had to do. What's the most significant injury that you fought your way through?
I think I have had so many injuries that I became a specialist on having injuries, and
Yeah.
I think some you can even see, like for example,
Oh yeah.
a couple here,
Yeah.
like my wrist pops. Like there are a few, like uh, I had surgery on my both knees, meniscus surgery, no ligaments, so that's good.
That's
Meniscus
good.
surgery on my both knees. The very end of my career, I tore my pec, and I decided to not do the surgery to compete one more year. And so I tore my pec. I tore the ligament on my wrist as well. And but anyways, what I tried to do back then is like deal with the injuries on the best way possible. I think like when you get injured, it's almost like an equation. if you ignore the injury and try to train very hard, you might spend more time off than you needed, than you should. So it's always, but if also like if you just stop training, stop lifting, stopping everything, you're leaving training on the table. You know, like you should be training at the. So my thing was always like try to measure how much I can train with that injury. So for example, I hurt my wrist. I'm gonna tape my wrist and I'm gonna avoid using this hand. You know, like, and maybe I'm gonna train people that are a little bit lower the level than I am, that I can kind of handle. Oh, I torn my meniscus. I'm gonna put a bunch of knee braces on it, and I'm gonna try to not use that leg as much. And then, but then there are some times that the knee is so bad that you literally cannot train. So I'm gonna go to the gym and work out my upper body, you know, like, and then there were injuries. For example, one time competing against Bochecha, I trapped my ribs pretty bad and hurted. Just to breathe would hurt.
Yeah.
And there was a time that I was trying to do yoga, you know, like I was like, I'm gonna work on my breath and try to stretch. And so I was always trying to do something that I could do that would not make the injury worse, that would take me off the training. So for example, translating that to the people who do jiu-jitsu for hobby, I think like if you do jiu-jitsu for hobby and you got hurt and you don't feel like doing jiu-jitsu, go to the gym, work out. If you can work out, try to stretch. But I think like it's like an old car, right? If you keep the car in the garage, the car doesn't start. So you gotta keep turning on the car, you know, like, and maybe you're not doing sparrings, but you're drilling, you know, you're going to the gym and you're just gonna drill. You do the warm up and you drill and you skip the sparrings. Maybe you lift weights, maybe you stretch, maybe you know, like you train lower level, maybe you only train on top, you know, like when I hurt my ribs also, I couldn't be on bottom, but I could train on top. So I would make a deal with my training partner, like, hey, if you sweep me, I come back on top. Okay, that's it.
No, that's great advice, and that's something I always say. You know, even like I've had similar injuries, not the pec, thank goodness, but I had my both knees done, the meniscus tears, and but the worst one for me was my groin. I tore my groin. And I was purple from my knee to my belly button and everything in between. It was just completely torn. But it kind of gave me an opportunity to take a step back. And for a few weeks, I couldn't be on the mats because it just hurt. But then when I did get on the mats, I was working my quote unquote bad side because that's the only side I could work. Now that's my good side. So it was kind of a blessing, right? There's always that give and take.
Oh, and by the way, I think that's how half guard was invented, by the way, because Roberto Correia, Gordo, I think he was some sort of like open guard / spider guard type of guy.
Yeah.
And then he hurt his knee and he couldn't do open guard or spider guard anymore. And then he started playing sideways and
no kidding,
doing half guard. Yeah. So you see like it came from an injury. You know?
Yeah.
And I think like this is a beautiful thing from jiu-jitsu, you know? Because for example, I feel like if you play basketball and you hurt your heel or your foot, you can't play basketball. You cannot even start. You know, like, what are you gonna do? If you play soccer and you hurt your knee, you cannot play soccer.
Yeah.
But jiu-jitsu, most of the injuries you can't figure out. You know, like you can drill, you can avoid that part of your body, you can play on top, you can play on bottom, you can, you know, like so that's a very good thing.
I love that. And speaking of half guard, you know, when I think of half guard, I think about two people, and you're one of them. And how did you develop your where did that come from? I mean, I can't imagine you came from a small school. Obviously you developed probably, I would imagine, a closed guard game back in those days. But then when you started competing, how did you develop the half guard that became the Bernardo Faria half guard? I mean, everybody knows you for it.
That's a great question too. And this is a good story too, because I feel very grateful for my instructor for that, because my instructor from my hometown, he was a spider guard type of guy, spider guard and De La Riva.
Okay.
And so half guard was not his thing, but he went out of his comfort zone to teach half guard on a class. And I was on that class. So I learned it, and was the single leg half guard. It was like you grab the lapel, you bump the person's hip with your knee, and you come up. That was the move. And I learned that move and became my move, you know, like. So the bottom line here is like, I see a lot of jiu-jitsu schools that the advanced class, the instructor only teaches his A game.
Mm.
He only teaches the things that he feels very comfortable teaching.
Yeah.
And he doesn't teach the other things. And even me as an instructor on my gym, for example, I really force myself to learn other stuff to make sure. And many times I make a disclaimer to the students. I tell them, like, listen, this is not my thing. I almost never did that too much. I probably did that a few times, but I studied. I watch a lot of videos.
Yeah.
And then I'm sharing with you guys. So, because I think, like, as a jiu-jitsu instructor, we should really try to teach everything to our students, like, because maybe I'm a half guard guy and half guard is not a good fit for you, but close guard is a good fit. Maybe beating bolo is a good fit. So I'm not going to teach beating bolo because I don't like beating bolo. No, I should be able to teach beating bolo as well.
Yeah.
I don't have to be the best instructor in the planet for beating bolo, but at least the basics I should, like.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, I started studying the deep half quite a bit because I was in a tournament and one of my opponents, good friend of mine, Chris, put me in deep half. And it was so frustrating because we were kind of at a stalemate. And then he frustrated me so much that I made a mistake and he swept me. And of course, he went to that, he swept me, and then he went to that over-under pass, and I was crushed, and I was so angry that I studied the hell out of it. I wanted to learn because I wanted to beat Chris.
I got it.
So now it's like, it's funny because I always say, I hate the deep half. I hate it. But because of that memory with Chris, but when people catch me playing deep half, they're like, oh, professor's playing deep half, so they make fun of me a little bit. But like you said, it's something that you have to expose yourself to. And it's something that you have to, like, get out of your comfort zone. And that's really hard for us, especially, well, people my age, especially. But what were some of the things that you had trouble with, like in your tournament life, where you're like, wow, this person plays such a good whatever guard or whatever that you had trouble with?
Good question. And for example, at some point I had a hard time against butterfly guards. And then coincidence, I was sent to teach and train at Marcelo's school.
I was about to say, you're with Marcelo.
Yeah. So over under against the butterfly at some point was hard to me.
Yeah.
And then after 6 months training at Marcelo's, I was like a specialist against butterfly because everybody used to play butterfly over there. So I put myself so much on those situations that got good very quick. So that's another thing as well. Like, I think in jiu-jitsu, you should find your gaps and train with people who are specialists on those moves. That's going to be the best way to get better at that position, like.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're developing something new, like say you've got a blue belt who's developing their butterfly guard, maybe let's call it purple belt, developing the butterfly guard. Is that something that maybe they should try on white belts until it works, and then work their way up to blue belts and then purples, and then kind of work their way up that way? How would you recommend that?
I think that's a good way to do it. Like, because for example, if you are only training with, like, let's say with the best black belts, it's going to be hard to develop new things. You can develop a new detail here and there, but develop a new thing is going to be pretty hard. But if you build up the position on lower belts, purple belts, brown belts, then when you see you're a specialist on that move, and now you're working against the black belt. So I would say that this is a great way for sure.
Yeah. So in these days, you're busy doing your business and you have your own academy and you're teaching students. A question that was asked to me, and it was a great question because we spend so much time studying and teaching, like, who's your instructor? Who teaches you?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I consider myself that I have 3 instructors. So my first one, who gave all my belts, which is Ricardo Marques from my hometown. He gave me all my belts from white to black belt. Then I became a student of Fabio Gurgel, which I'm very, very grateful and thankful, because it's literally like one of the best instructors in the planet. And I do see the success of Alliance, like, and it's all Fabio.
Oh, yeah.
And then he sent me to New York, and I came to New York with, like, open-minded to be Marcelo Garcia's student. Like, I remember people saying, like, oh, you're a world champion, you're going to train under a guy who's a world champion. And I was like, is there a better person to pick in the world, the planet, to be a student from than Marcelo?
Yeah.
So I have those 3 guys as, like, 3 jiu-jitsu instructors, professors, mentors that I had, and I'm very grateful. And for example, nowadays I don't have an instructor on my side anymore, right? So, but I'm always in touch with them, and I watch a lot of videos on BJJ
Yeah.
Fanatics. Like, literally, like sometimes I go teach a move that I'm not very familiar
Yeah.
on the school, and I get that video from that person, and I watch before the class. Like
Yeah.
I do that a lot. Like I just did like last week with Choi Bar, for example. Last month, sorry.
I'm sorry.
That's
Say
a
that, the what?
new arm bar that a lot of people
Oh,
are using called Choi Bar.
gotcha.
And we filmed it with Choi,
Okay.
and that's his nickname. And I was studying that move.
Oh, I'm gonna have to get that one because
Yeah.
that's not one that I have yet. So I'll definitely get that one. So let me ask you about just specifically about Marcelo. Outside of jiu-jitsu, what has Marcelo taught you about yourself or about life or anything like that?
Marcelo is one of the most disciplined, and his mindset is the best athlete mindset that I ever saw in my life. Like and just by being around him, being surrounded by him was like game changing. Like and he has a lot of theories about like when he's competing, and like that it's literally like was very special to be on his side every day on the mat training, and I think that made a huge difference in my career.
I just want to close by, let everybody know where they can find you, where, social media wise, other stuff, anything you want to talk about, fire away.
Yeah, no, guys, thanks so much for this interview, Alex. Really appreciate it. It was a huge honor for me here to be talking with you for this last hour here. And I have a gym in Bedford, Massachusetts. And also, like, I think, like, we have all the websites like BJJ Fanatics, my YouTube channel, my Instagram. So if anybody wants to get in touch, just follow me on social media and make a visit to Massachusetts and get instruction at BJJ Fanatics. I think that's the way that we get in touch.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. And I've enjoyed this more than I can say. I really appreciate your time, and I hope to meet you in person soon.
Okay. Thanks so much, Alex.
Take care, sir.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
And please just don't forget to edit. Just make sure it doesn't
Absolutely.
go through.
Absolutely, I will. Thank you, Bernardo.
Bye-bye.
Bye. This episode of the BJJ Foxcast is brought to you by BioPro. BioPro is an all-natural alternative to prescription human growth hormone, which aids in recovery, anti-aging, metabolism, libido, immunity, skin health, cognition, sleep, and stress. Just one vial per day provides a substantial boost to all of these growth factors. Okay, so that's what they want me to say. Here's what I know as an aging grappler. I've been using BioPro Plus and the nighttime variant, BioPro Plus Cortisleep, for several months, and it feels like I've grown a third lung. My gas tank is noticeably bigger, my recovery is faster, and I'm back on the mats much quicker, not just between training sessions, but between rounds. Now you can get $30 off your first order of BioPro when you use the code Foxcast at www.bioproteintech.com. That's code Foxcast for $30 off your first order at www.bioproteintech.com. Thank you, BioPro.